Welcome to Dove and Dragon Radio. I'm your host, M.l.Ruscsak. I'm here with special guest, Margaret Oconner. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Emma. It's great to be back.
Yes, it's been a couple years since you've been on the show.
Time flies.
Yes, it has. So we're here to talk today about celiacs.
Celiac?
Yeah, that one. It's a little bit of a mouthful. So before we get into that, what led you into, for our listeners who haven't heard from you before, what led you into writing these books?
Well, in the case of this one, Journey of a Celiac Soul, A Second Chance at Life, it's basically my journey of living 20 years with an undiagnosed autoimmune disease, celiac disease. And it's a disease which nearly took my own life. And I'm also writing it for fellow individuals that have this disease and want to move forward beyond this awful loss of your everyday, what we considered regular foods, or for even other family members, whether it's immediate, friends, relatives that just can't seem to understand, oh, well, a little wheat won't hurt you. So it's so sad in a way that you've probably heard, or the listeners have heard, they think of celiac and they think, oh yeah, that's that fad diet. And in all reality, that's the furthest thing from what the reality of this disease is. We think of diabetes, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. They are all autoimmune diseases, just like celiac disease is. And the big problem with celiac disease is if an individual eats either wheaten food that would contain like the grains of wheat, rye, or barley, for some reason, our system within our body sees this as like an invader and basically would end up attacking your own intestinal wall, the tissue there. And if you could picture like these projections, little projections that are like wavy, like villi, they're there to take in any food that you eat, to take in the most important part, the nutrients, the vitamins. Well, for some reason, when we ingest these grains, they almost act like sandpaper in a sense, and they completely remove all the villi. So what happens is you are eating and zip, nothing is being absorbed. And that's why with celiacs, there are some smaller amount of celiacs that don't lose weight, but predominantly, oh my God, you just lose awful weight. You're constantly hungry. You just can't get enough food in. You'll have a huge meal, and within an hour later, you could start all over again. You are just so tired. You have bone pain. There's a gazillion symptoms with this. But the scary part is, I mean, in a sense, thank God, when I finally received a diagnosis, the doctor said, Margaret, you're a lucky woman. I thought, what is he talking about? And he said, you would have been dead within 6 months. So right now, there is no medication that you can take. The only thing that will help you is going on what they refer to as a celiac diet. And that means any of your old foods that your normal everyday foods, your different breads, your cakes, your cookies, your pies, your pastas, that's completely gone. So you have to replace that with new grains like rice grain, teff, armor math, I'm killing the name,
Uh,
different grains.
yeah, or you can do nut based. There's almond based flour that you can use now. I mean, it's not cheap alternatives to what we see as a normal diet, but at the same time, it's what we have to work with.
Yes, because this Dr. Alessio Fasano, he came from Italy, and he was basically flabbergasted. Where are the celiacs here in the United States? He would see children basically in a month. He would see a lot of children, and they all had celiac disease. So he comes over here to the University of Maryland, and okay, he was here a week, he was here a month, he was here 5 months, a year. Well, wait a minute, what is going on? And this was really unbelievable. Back in 1994, the agency, the National Health Institute, they came out with something like about an 800-page report, and it included digestive diseases and even the gastrointestinal diseases.
Mhm.
And there was not one word, a mention of celiac. So basically, you had the agency, which is supposed to protect any American, their health. They had no idea that celiac disease was even over in our country. And in Italy, say you went in as a child or as an adult and presented like with symptoms. So from the time your symptoms started to the time of your diagnosis in Italy is only about 2 or 3 weeks. All right, let's come back here to the US. And between the time the symptoms initiate and the time you're diagnosed was 10 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right for the US. There's a mass disconnect between our health organizations across the world. We don't share knowledge. Obviously, we share knowledge. A diagnosis of celiac would not take 10 years in the US when it takes 3 weeks, 2 weeks, or 6 weeks even in Italy.
I know, it's just unreal. So thank God, what I'm trying to say is thank God that this doctor made his way over here, because then he was able to access blood samples from the American Red Cross and found like a gazillion individuals that definitely had celiac disease. But the problem was due to, the privacy, he couldn't contact these individuals,
Mhm.
to let them know that they had this disease.
Right.
But
There are HIPAA laws we know protect us as individuals for our medical things. But at the same time, when a medical doctor like this one in 1994 was able to find out that so many people have this disease, they are also prohibited from contacting anyone.
yes, so their hands are tied. It's almost like damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Mhm. It's one thing after another. It's the laws don't make sense, and then the practices of sharing information don't make sense. So where's the breakdown actually at within our medical world?
There's so many.
It-
I mean, it's so sad. When you think of the millions of dollars that go into research and everything, and we just seem to somehow be missing the main components. Things are.
it is really, really sad. I mean, our medical field right now is a debacle because we pay so much money to research all these different diseases, when in reality, we could probably pick up the phone to any other country in the world and say, do you have research on? And they probably are 10 years advanced from where we are.
This Dr. Tom O'Brien, it was either him or Dr. Fasano, and now I can't remember, but they were, I think it was Dr. Tom O'Brien. He's another wonderful doctor related to celiac disease. And anyway, he's had several seminars on celiac disease. But he was saying that from the time basically, and this is maybe going back about 5 years ago, I heard this um, in the United States, say a research paper comes out, with some new advance, to the time it would reach your doctor would be about 15 or plus years. And then again, so there again, that means your diagnosis is waiting all that time
Mhm.
when the information is actually right there. It's already out there.
It is. So how do we go from, okay, this is how basically diseases get labeled as a bad diet. I'm sure you've seen this. You don't know what that is, so you try these fad diets and they call it the celiac diet as a fad diet. It's not.
No, the big movie stars and the tennis players got on it. And aside from celiac disease, there's non-celiac sensitivity. And there's 18 million Americans that have that. Now, I'm not saying they have that, but maybe that's what they have because they felt, better getting off of the wheat.
Mhm.
But in a sense, it was a godsend for uh, individuals that have celiac disease. We number 3 million. And the food quality left a lot to be desired. Um, I was diagnosed back in 1986, and it was awful. There was bread out there, but unless you toasted that bread, say you just wanted to make an everyday sandwich and just slap some butter on it,
Mhm.
don't put it in the toaster. Well, yeah, you can try that, but I mean, it would basically crumble. And some of the companies, oh my God, it was really, but what I'm trying to say is after they brought this fad thing to it, the manufacturers, of course, jumped on the bandwagon because they can see the big money in their pockets. And
Exactly.
thank God for us because then it greatly improved the quality of the product. But there were all those years before it became a fad diet, and I shouldn't even be complaining because there were women at our support group, and they had had this from the time they were a baby. So you think back in the 1920s and 30s, basically rice and bananas was about it. I mean that's awful to say, but um, and individuals today that get it, really, I know it's just. I guess what it is your whole normalcy of what you consider everyday eating is immediately and forever taken away from you. And there's just such a feeling of, well, when I was diagnosed, it was such an isolating feeling. No one never seemed to hear the word celiac. No other family members and my family had it. No friends had it. So there was just like this great sense of isolation. And again, that normalcy of eating was just, it was like a switch went off day and night. And I happened to be in my kitchen when I received a call from my doctor. And he said, I think I know what you have. But he said, I want you to go in tomorrow and we'll run one more test. And at first, when I received his call after waiting 20 years, I thought, oh my God, finally, this is wonderful. Because I had been to 8 different doctors, and there were a number of them that obviously, when I would present to a doctor, I was very emaciated. I was so thin. I would look like I was anorexic. So basically, they would just like label me, oh, you're anorexic. The
Mhm.
help you need is at the psychiatrist office. They wouldn't even run any tests. So what I'm trying to say is when I finally got a diagnosis, I just got so excited. Finally, I know I'm not crazy. I mean, let's face it, who knows your body better than you do?
Oh, I understand completely. Back in 2011, when I was going through my medical issues, I dropped almost 70 pounds overnight, and the
Wow.
doctors couldn't find anything wrong with, and I had so many doctors say it's all in your head. No, it's not
Oh
in my
yeah.
head. Well, technically it was in my head, just not the way that they were thinking, because I had a mass there that was causing all sorts of issues. But at the same time, getting a doctor to say, hey, we have an answer, that was like a glorious day, the clouds opened up, the sun shined in. I
Yes.
mean, everything, it's there.
It's wonderful, but in my case, unfortunately, that immediately disappeared
Mhm.
because this doctor went on to say, If I think I know what you have, your whole way of eating is going to forever change." And it was like then he was still talking, but I think my mind was like just frozen, trying to take it in. And it was his last sentence that he left me with: "You will never again be able to eat your regular favorite cookies." So I remember putting the phone down, and I happened to look across the room, and there was this one cabinet door open, and I could see like Duncan Hines brownies,
Mhm.
and there was like a chocolate cake, and there was something else. And I thought, it was like all of a sudden those foods, I'm not going to be able to eat them anymore. And then right away, my mind went back to never again will you be able to eat your favorite cookies. Well, this was the winter time, and we had about 10 boxes of those delicious chocolate Girl Scout mint cookies
Oh,
in the freezer. So now remembering I can eat anything, eat and eat. I grabbed 8 boxes and I brought them upstairs, and it was anxiety. It was this awful panic
mhm.
that overtook me because I knew if the test came in the next day, well, next year I'm not going to be able to be eating these cookies. So, I basically devoured them. And then I remember my mother and sister came in and they saw all these boxes, empty Girl Scout boxes on the table, and they wondered what happened. I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But anyway, it was that's how it hit me. But of course, everyone's, individual, how it
Mhm.
might hit you. But associated with that idea, that panicking is, um, okay, you get the diagnosis. So, what was your everyday life? That was your regular eating habits. But now you have a diagnosis. So, you have to move forward because if you're trapped at thinking back, well, look at over here, this is what I used to eat, uh, you're going to be almost like in a state of denial, and you're not going to be moving forward with your life. And there was William J. Warden, and he wrote a book, Grief Counseling, Grief Therapy. And he had like different steps that you would go through.
Mhm.
And the first one was like to accept the reality of the loss. And of course, in our sense, we're referring to regular everyday foods. And when I was first diagnosed, it took, about a good 4 months before I really started to feel like my own self health wise.
Mhm.
So at each meal, my other family members, I would see their plates, which of course had what I used to eat, and I had my celiac food. And there was no problem. But then at that time when I started to feel better, it was like a switch went off. And at that particular meal, boy, did I notice their plates. It was almost like there were neon lights around them beckoning me, come take this food. But what I'm trying to say is all that past time, there was never a problem. And it just nailed me. I mean, it really hit me. It was very uncomfortable, an uneasy feeling, a great deal of frustration. So anyway, again, that's how that hit me. But if someone didn't go 20 years and you were diagnosed a lot faster, well, then you're immediately going to be faced with the reality of the loss. But again, it's actually the best thing that can happen because you want to move forward with your life. You don't want to be stuck thinking about what you can't have. And then there
Mhm.
was another step, experience the pain of grief. Well, here again, really look at the foods that you never can have. And you think of like the irreversibility of that every day, or the finality, just that whole continuum. And initially, yeah, it will make you feel blue or sad.
Mhm.
But the reverse of that is to think, well, look, it's bad enough. Perhaps I can't eat these foods, and now you want me to examine, you know, examine any feelings around that. But if you keep those feelings and you figure, oh, let me just maybe push them down, uh, eventually they're going to come out. And this time when they come out, it's not going to be sadness. It's going to be a great anger, rage, um, resentment. And we all know when we see a little child has a tantrum, that's one thing. But to see an adult, you can remember that they speak very loudly, and I'm just like giving you sort of an example. In this case, it would maybe be something like, well, why can't I have those foods? Everyone
Mhm.
else in my family's eating those
Oh,
foods.
I get it all the time. I have my own food sensitivities. So my sensitivities are not like anything else in the family. So I watch them eat, or of course, depending on the sensitivity, they can't have their foods when they're around me. So then they get mad at me because they can't have whatever it is I'm sensitive to.
I know it does. It brings out an array of emotions for sure. But that's actually it's the best thing, to move forward.
Mhm.
Uh, but that idea that you just said about, something that they can't have, and then you see it, and the third step is to adjust to an environment in which the deceased is missing, or in our case, it would be the loss of our food missing.
Mhm.
And I remembered that first time, as I say, when I saw those plates, and then they noticed I was looking at their plates, and then they were afraid to pick up their fork, and I said, "Wait a minute, we have to have a talk here. This isn't going to work." And I told them, "Yeah, it's hard right now, but please, I would feel awful if you stop eating, what you can still eat."
Mhm.
And we all agreed, and then that was the best thing that could ever happen. But really, it's not only being like, diagnosed with a disease, one person. If they're within a family unit, it's like the whole landscape for each meal is changed.
It
The
does.
dynamics.
It does. I mean, if you have one family member in your household of say three, and one person can't have say dairy, everyone knows cheese, milk, and eggs.
Right.
You can't have it. Now, what do you actually make for dinners? Because if you're an Italian family, what do you eat? You eat your pastas, you eat your eggs, you eat your cheeses, you eat, how do you take all that away from the family? So you actually have to be conscious about what you're making. Well, then we go into celiac, which is no gluten, so wheat, basically. Well, that gets bread, cookies, cakes, anything else, pastas. Now you have to go to different brands. Well, today we have an entire aisle in our shopping markets for gluten-free, which is great. Well, 20, 30 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Oh, no. And then it was scary when you were looking for an item, because let's face it, if you don't have this issue and your bread wasn't there, well, then you just go down the bread aisle and there's brand A, B, C. You walk out of that store with some loaf of bread, and it's the same thing basically with whatever the product is. It's just not, not only the store brand, but there's others in there. And there was some talk show on, and the person was just going on with it was ridiculous. Was saying that these people they're getting upset because we're taking their product. Well, hello, if that's the only thing that we can eat, yes,
Yeah,
we
when
we
you go
are
to,
upset.
yeah, see, if you have dairy products, it's Delia cheese or dairy. That's plant-based. So if someone is buying all of it up and there isn't any for someone that actually needs it, they get mad because the shelf is empty. Well, let's put this in terms of a normal person. If you go to the store and your favorite cookie is missing because they're sold out, you get mad. This is the same principle.
It's yeah, and I have the dairy issue too. So if
Oh,
I
you
go
got
out
it.
like
Oh,
to a restaurant, uh, and they have a gluten free a mix there, say for waffles or something, but um, they only carry regular milk. They don't carry like what you think they would today, like almond milk at least, or something else.
mhm.
Well, oh, but we can make that with water. Well, no, I don't want to have watered down pancakes.
Right. It's getting better. It's not there yet, but it is getting better.
Yes, and in my case, it was great. A few years ago, a woman that opened this little bistro had celiac disease, and it was like a dream. You could go in there and she would, whether you had celiac disease or a dairy issue or whatever, she just had those little extras. She had that almond milk. She had some type of a gluten dairy free, like butter to, put on your toast. Um, and unfortunately, then the pandemic came and they closed shop. But
Well, maybe hopefully they are able to reopen as the economy comes back, hopefully. But we do need these little bistros to come back and be thriving because there's people like you, all 3 million people or more, depending on what the disease is, that have these dairy issues, that have the celiac issues, they have the other issues that we call fad diets, and they're actually medical issues.
yes, and I guess we don't. This I'm not. I hope I'm not coming across like, oh, look at a pity party. No, it's not that. We want just a fair share, that when we go out to eat, that the waiter is going to be telling us the truth, if that's gluten free or not. Because if this is just seen as a fad diet, well, then the waiter isn't going to take this seriously. And
Right.
Dr. O'Brien said, basically, you have to think of when you're eating every forkful, it's either unflammatory or it's inflammatory. And if we get into a situation where there's gluten, it's not just that one time deal. Those antibodies are made, and that anti inflammatory reaction can go on anywhere from 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just all these hiddens, or oh, you can have uh, a little wheat
Well, that's not always
that
the
won't,
case. Yeah,
that won't hurt you.
yeah.
And look at the people that don't even have like celiac disease. Look at the people that have an awful um, allergy, anaphylactic. That can
Mm-hmm.
kill them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because sometimes people will poo-poo even allergies, and they don't seem, unfortunately, to understand the seriousness with them as well.
No, they really don't. And unless you actually have the disease or the reaction to whatever it is, people don't understand it. And we have to change the culture that we are all individuals. We all have our own problems medically. Some of
Mhm.
them we can see visibly, and some of them we don't. If we have a food allergy, and celiac disease is technically an allergy, if you go through it, is an um, there's a lot of medical jargon, but we put it under allergy, then it's more, okay, now you can't have it because it's an allergy, quote unquote, quote, but it's better to deal with.
Yeah, and that's why the people will say, "Well, how are you calling it an allergy when it's or an autoimmune disease, and now it's an allergy?" The restaurant industry,
Mhm.
they will label it.
Yeah.
They definitely label it as an allergy, but whether it's celiac disease, whether it's someone that has the disease of alcoholism,
Mhm.
in a sense, it's 24/7. You
It doesn't go away.
whether it's in your own home, if the other family members don't have it, you open your refrigerator and it's there. Or, you go out to your friend's house, you
Mhm.
go to any store, even in a hospital, or there's vending machines around. Basically, food and drink is practically everywhere you go, and it is an awful like temptation, because you see like a donut, the smell of like fresh baked bread, you drive yourself crazy.
Mhm.
But as an adult, I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I know how sick I will feel. But I really feel sorry for the families that have younger children. And then, of course, they go out uh, to their friend's house, and there's that awful peer pressure.
Mhm.
And that's when they, of course, will obviously indulge in the other food, or unfortunately, another neighbor, whatever, doesn't take this as being serious and is maybe serving them something that obviously, um, isn't wheat free.
Correct. But we are almost out of time. So where can our listeners and our viewers find you and more about your book?
Yes, they can go to Amazon for my book. And my website is yourradicaltruth.com, yourradicaltruth.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show, Margaret.
Thank you, M.l.
And for our reviewers and our listeners, happy reading. And we're out. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you. It's so funny. I'm hearing your voice. Not seeing you.
Yes, this is why we changed from just radio to a visual, because it brings us more together.
Okay.
So I will get you the links over as soon as I have them. Thank you so much
And
again.
I'll do a blog, so then I'll mention your, show.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Take it easy. Thanks again.
You too. Bye-bye.